luckily I'm healthy. You know, when I was in my 30s and 40s and 50s, I used to be sick quite often. Now I don't hurt anywhere. I'm really fortunate. I'm just amazed at myself that I'm so healthy. I don't have a sore bone in my body. The philosophy is to be the best you can be.
Welcome back to the Community of Innovation podcast, brought to you by the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, otherwise known as CABI. I'm Allison Sekuler, Managing Director of CABI and Vice President of Research at Baycrest Health Sciences.
And I'm Rosanne Aleong, Director of Research, Innovation, and Translation at Baycrest Health Sciences. Today, we're thrilled to bring you episode 2 of our special podcast mini-series in collaboration with Baycrest at Home. As Canada and much of the world continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic, today's episode will focus on how older adults across various settings have been trying to maintain their physical health during the pandemic and the need for physical distancing.
We've got some really great guests today, and they're going to be discussing critical questions like how have older adults fared in congregate living settings like retirement homes or in the community? What strategies have they come up with to stay healthy? And how are innovators meeting the needs of older adults during these challenging times? I thought we had some really great conversations with folks about all of this. And Rosanne, I'm wondering what stood out for you about all of this?
So my favorite aspect of the pod was my incredible interview with a 93-year young senior here in Toronto. We heard a little bit from him at the top of the pod, but he shares his incredible story of resiliency and successful aging. What stood out for you?
Resiliency, I think, is like the name of the game for this whole episode. It was just amazing how people are able to adapt to this situation, but also the way that, throughout people's lifetimes, they realize that they're not a static being, right? They can change throughout their lifetimes. And just hearing Richard Sheppard, who's again, an incredibly active 62-year-old from Calgary, talking about, I got sort of tired just listening to him talk about all the different things that he normally would be doing. And but he's still trying new things now. And it's just so inspiring. And then to hear people like Angie Seto, who's the innovator we'll be talking about the seniors program that she's running for Canada's National Ballet Schools and collaboration with Baycrest at Home and others. It's just amazing how people are able to adapt what they're doing to the current situation.
I mean, I loved Angie's discussion about creativity. So how we can still be creative, even in the middle of a pandemic, and really think about personal expression. So I think our listeners are really going to be fortunate to hear that story today.
Yeah, like our focus is physical health. It connects to so many different things, right? So if you're physically healthy, you're going to be more healthy from a cognitive perspective. You'll feel better from your mental health perspective. You'll try new things. You'll be more creative. You'll be innovative yourself. I mean, it's so physical health is like at the core of everything, I find. So.
I mean, there's a reason why we're potentially calling this episode Mind, Body, Spirit.
Mind, body, spirit, it's all coming together. Before we jump right into all the mind, body, spirit discussion, I just want to remind folks that the mini-series is co-sponsored by Baycrest at Home, and we'd like to introduce their director, Simon Cheeseman, who also happens to be our co-executive producer of the pod. Simon, you can tell us a little bit more about what Baycrest at Home does.
Thanks, Allison, and it's nice to be back again for this second episode in our special mini-series. We remain very excited to be working with you guys to create this content for our listeners. Baycrest at Home, in short, is a service that uses technology to make the kind of expertise and services and supports that are typically only found on a specialized geriatric campus like Baycrest, of which there are not too many campuses like it in the world, but to make those kinds of services available to people in the home, to address a lot of the gaps in care that exist for people who are trying to stay in the place where they call home. And it's aimed at both the older adult looking to stay at home and the family that is already there helping them. So we have services for both those groups, including a lot of services that try to address physical and cognitive health of both parties. And so we're excited to be with you helping to make this podcast, which will tell the story of a few innovators and older adults who are going through this very strange time and tackling those issues with their families.
Thanks, Simon. Now over to you, Rosanne.
Today, we kicked off the pod with a small teaser of my interview with George Nakamura, a 93-year-old resident of Sheppard Village, a seniors community here in Toronto with both retirement and long-term care settings. We'll hear more now about his inspiring story of resiliency and adaptation from a youth in British Columbia in the 1930s and 40s to his success as an entrepreneur in Ontario, to his over 30-year retirement with his wife and 4 children. Most importantly, he shares his experiences with the pandemic lockdown at Sheppard Village, his creative approaches to staying physically fit, and his singular advice on how to make your later years even better than your middle ones. So without further ado, I toss it to George.
My name is George Nakamura. I was born on Angie Seto, that's a town in Salt Spring Island, British Columbia, on June the 7th, 1927.
Did you spend most of your life in British Columbia?
No, not till the war with United States, when Japan declared war on United States. That's when things started to change quite quickly.
And how did life change for you and your family then?
Well, at that time, they had the War Measures Act, which is something that they don't do unless it's really dire straits, I guess. So they had the power to move us anywhere they pleased. So they moved us, they gathered all people of Japanese origin into Hastings Park, which is something like exhibition grounds here. You know, they have a festival every year. And we stayed there for, I'm not sure, about 3 or 4 months. I think we're all crowded into buildings, and we were fed army style, you know, just like the army does on a tin plate, whatever they made for us.
What was the next move, George?
The next move was from Slocan. We moved to Chatham. That's in Ontario. And, well, it was a forced relocation, but we were sent to a farm. We had some choices, actually, at that time. Either you had to, although we were born in Canada, know anything about Japan, we were forced to make a choice, you know, whether you want to stay in Canada or go back to Japan. And a lot of them, you know, were in the same boat as me, that they'd never been to Japan, they don't speak the language. So the choice was quite obvious that we would come out east instead of going to Japan. We had to move east of the Rockies.
So you said you spent a couple of years on the farm. So I guess this puts you kind of at 16, 17?
Yeah, I just finished high school.
While working on the farm?
Yeah, well, I used to have to milk the cows in the morning and the evening. And on Saturdays and Sundays, we'd have to cultivate the sugar beets or whatever. It was like a family affair and looking after the crop. So it was on a contract basis. So unless we harvested the crop, we won't get paid for it, you see.
So you finished high school on the farm. How did you end up in Toronto, George?
Well, my eldest brother, he found a job in his line of work in Toronto, so he moved fairly quickly. He didn't like farm work to start off with, so he moved quite quickly and got into Toronto, and he was working as in a dry cleaning plant. And then he got a house. He rented a house that would keep us all there, so we moved all there with him. And he had a family himself, his wife and his one little girl they had.
So where are you now, George?
I'm here at Sheppard Village. I really like it here. In the last few years, my wife got sick and she wasn't too well. She had congestive heart failure and different things. She was in and out of the hospital quite a bit. And then I got to a point where I thought, well, we got to look for a place to retire. And we were retired also, but we sold the house and we were in an apartment for nearly 10 years. Anyhow, I found this place on one of these tours. And the lady says this place was just opened up. You know, the rooms were opened up. So I didn't even know how much it cost or anything, so I'll take it. And I had to scramble to get everything ready within a week or 10 days. They put me through the mill here. And luckily, my doctor, my family doctor, he was a nice man. He looked after us for 30 or 40 years, I guess. And there was a lot of paperwork that had to be done, and he got it done for me. You know, I guess his nurse or whoever did it, they did the work for him, for us.
So when did you move into Sheppard Village, you and your wife?
July the 2nd last year. Just past the year now. She was only in this room for a little over a month, because after we moved, the very next week she went in the hospital, and then she had to go to rehab and all that. So in total, she must have lived here 1 month before she passed away. It was tough. It's still tough.
I'm sorry to hear that, George. So I guess we're living in some very interesting times right now, right, George?
I don't know if it's interesting or pretty disastrous as far as I could see. It's so bad. You know, it's a wonder if people can keep their sanity in a place like this. We're in a lockdown, but the people here are so good. I'm really thankful.
So what has the pandemic looked like for you at Sheppard Village, George?
Well, it's hard to describe because, you know, I've only been here a year, and I liked what I saw, and then this thing happened, and I don't know how it's going to be after this thing is finished. You know, we can't go out. I'm locked in my room, actually. Isolation, I guess, but I keep myself busy. I read a lot and watch television a lot. I'm sort of been there and done that. I hate to brag about that, but I feel quite content here. I have my meals served, you know, right to your door. And I'm a terrible cook, so I never liked cooking to start off with. So this is the ideal place for me. And I do a little exercise every morning, you know, for about 10, 15 minutes. And they used to have exercises here at the home here. They used to have 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, for an hour. You sit in a chair and do all your exercise. And it was very good because, you know, you don't get exercises where you go on continuously for an hour. Pretty exhausting for most people. But, you know, most people that was taking it, they really miss it now that it's on. They have it on TV, but it's not the same as having an instructor in front of you. And, you know, you don't have to worry about doing it yourself. You just follow the instructor. So that's what's good about it. As long as you can get up on time and go there. And in the last summer, we used to do it outside, out in the yard, so it was good.
But no more.
No more. The thing is that luckily I'm healthy. You know, when I was in my 30s and 40s and 50s, I used to be sick quite often. My poor wife had to look after me a lot. Anyhow, now I don't hurt anywhere. I'm really fortunate.
So you're actually healthier now in your 90s than you think you were in your 30s?
Yes, I really do, because I don't have a sore bone in my body.
So what's the secret to your success?
I really don't know. I think, well, to start off with, you know, when we used to take Tai Chi, after we retired, I used to do my version of this Tai Chi, which I've forgotten now, but I only do about 10 different motions. And it's something that doesn't require too much muscle or anything like that. You just sort of go through the motions of certain things. And I do my style every morning at 10 o'clock. So it's sort of a routine that I've gotten into, and I do it every morning when the time comes. And there's a lot to learn in Tai Chi as well, all the movements. There are 107 movements. So I might remember 2 or 3, and I improvise from that, you see.
Sounds like you keep your sanity pretty well.
Well, I hope to, you know. I have to think of it sort of like not too seriously. You know, you should be lucky to be alive, I figure, at my age.
And also feeling healthier in your 90s than when you were in your 30s.
That's right. It's amazing. I'm just amazed at myself that I'm so healthy. So if I'm struck dead now, today, I have no regrets.
What an inspiring story, Rosanne. Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
I know I have no excuse not to work out. So needless to say, I signed up for power yoga and Pilates.
Both at the same time?
Combined tight class.
Very tight. It's going to be very tight. It was just so inspiring. And I'm really looking forward to the next conversations we're going to have with our panelists. And so let's introduce them now.
So first, I'd like to introduce Richard Sheppard, who is a 62 years young Calgary resident who's married with 2 adult children and 2 grandsons. After retiring last year from a long career in finance, Richard has taken the opportunity to engage in a variety of physical activities, including skiing, cycling, kayaking, and working out at the gym. As well, he has continued to explore his interests in finance and investments, developments in technology and innovation, longevity research, reading nonfiction and fiction. By the way, he's currently working his way through the classics, 2 a week, woodworking, cooking, and travel. Perhaps not under the current circumstances. As well, his 96-year-old father is currently living with dementia in a care facility in Victoria, BC, and his mother unfortunately passed away from Alzheimer's disease at the age of 84. So aging and brain health are incredibly personal and important topics to Richard. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And we'd also like to welcome to the podcast Angie Seto, who's the manager of community dance programs for seniors at Canada's National Ballet School, based here in Toronto, Ontario. She studied dance at Ryerson University, York University as well, and she is a graduate also of Canada's National Ballet School's teacher training program. She's been teaching dance for more than 2 decades, and she joined the artistic faculty at NBS in 2005. In her current role as manager of the community dance program for seniors, Angie is an integral part of NBS's exciting collaboration with Baycrest to develop meaningful and engaging dance activities for older adults. We're going to hear a little bit more about that in a bit. And she's also part of the leadership group that founded the Dance for Parkinson's Network Canada, which we'll also be hearing about. And that network really strives to improve access to dance programs for people living with Parkinson's, as well as providing resources to dance teachers. So when she's not teaching dance, she is still active, spending time with her family and maybe even watching some hockey. So welcome, Angie.
Thank you very much.
So let's just jump right in and start to talk about issues of access and issues of routine. How has the pandemic impacted your lives and changed the way that you're living? Richard, before the COVID-19 pandemic, what did maintaining your physical and cognitive health look like for you, and what changed once COVID-19 gave us a lockdown in Alberta?
When I retired, my focus was focusing on myself, maintaining body, mind, and spirit. So I had always been fairly active. When I retired in May of 2019, I kind of ramped that up a bit because I had obviously more time. So as in the introduction, I water ski, I snow ski, I kayak when it's not frozen out there, ride the bike, hit the gym every other day. So fairly active. So when COVID hit, obviously all the social activities, the ski hill closed immediately. Going to the gym was off the table. So all my routines kind of came to an end. May and April, it's a little, it's not the greatest season for being outdoors here. So I would have to say my physical activity went on hiatus for a couple of months. We'd go out for walks, but it just wasn't as intense as it was before.
Yeah, and how did you deal with not having like a fixed schedule of when you're going to be doing things? Was that also a challenge?
Feeling a little bit guilty, but then you don't know how long it's going to last, right. And so on. So I thought for a couple of months, it's not a big deal. Spring is around the corner. Maybe they'll get this resolved and, we'll be skiing again and doing those things. Soon as the snow melted, I was out on my bike and ramping it up again. And then with the nicer weather, that was less of an issue to be outdoors and exercising. So I've been pretty active through the summer months, but I'm still looking to next winter what that is going to look like.
Yeah. And because you were taking advantage of so many different sort of programs, I mean, part of it is there's the physical activity, but there's also the social interaction. So when you've got all of those programs getting closed and, classes you might have been taking at places like the YMCA and other places closing, what did that do in terms of your motivation? Not having that structure that you mentioned before, did that make it a little bit harder?
It makes it harder. I guess I like to increase the likelihood that something will happen. So the social aspect is going out with other people, is you've put it in your calendar, you've committed to doing this, and now you're doing things more solo or with your spouse and so on. So it's less likely to happen. Which for me, who I like to regiment everything, that was a bit of a challenge. It's still a challenge. The gyms have opened up again, the Y, so I could go in there, but I have some real concerns about going into an enclosed and indoor facility like a gym. So even though I could do it and schedule it in, and they have all kinds of protocols in place, I am a little ambivalent about doing that.
Angie, in your role at the National Ballet School, managing all the seniors programs, are you hearing similar sorts of things about the stories that we've heard from George and Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. We have such a variety of programming for older adults, and a lot of our participants were hearing similar things about, their routine being disrupted. And typically coming to a dance class has that sense of community, and there's a connection to a social aspect as well as the physical benefits and all of those activities that go with it. So certainly hearing that this climate of programming being suspended has meant that they're looking for other alternatives to stay engaged and be physical. So that's part of what inspired us to pivot some of our programming because of the fact that people are at home and not able to come to on-site programming and that kind of thing. So dance being such a wonderful thing to not just be physical but uplift mood, we're really looking at ways to connect people even if it's remotely.
So Angie, you mentioned sort of that intersection between the physical and the cognitive, like the mood and the social and community. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit more about how you, and we can absolutely ask Richard about that, take a holistic approach to wellness?
Absolutely. And because of the nature of dance, there's already this connection with mind, body, soul, because there's a physical component, and beyond doing just the movements, there's the quality of how you're doing them, the artistic expression, there's an emotional component, and through the music, that can also be an inspiration of finding new ways of moving and finding your own sense of style and self-expression. So there's ways to develop and build up confidence and go beyond just doing a physical step for exercise, but making it more meaningful in a really holistic way. And that can be part of what's so engaging and enjoyable about it, and such an access point for people.
I think, the idea about getting creative and trying new things, it opens up a lot of opportunities for the programming that you've got also, Angie, right? Because you were mentioning that, because of COVID in some ways, it's people are maybe even a little bit more interested in getting remote kinds of programming. And I'm wondering if you can just sort of share a little bit more about what the National Ballet School programs are for seniors, and how it blends the physical and cognitive, and what are the benefits for older adults that you've seen, especially in the time of COVID?
Yeah, and our regular programming where we have on-site classes, but we also have video stream programming available, obviously needed to change and be suspended while COVID is happening. And what we've focused some energy on is dancing at home, so that people can access some quality dance programming right in the comfort of their own home or wherever they're at. And maybe they're there by themselves dancing, or maybe with family members. So we've developed a pilot in collaboration with Baycrest for our Baycrest MBS Seniors at Home pilot, which is happening over the summer. So over the course of the summer, there was a 6-week pilot where we did an online class that you could view on demand and see one class a week, about 20 minutes long. It's a seated class, so accessible to many varieties of physical and cognitive challenges or levels, and you can do that seated, and there's a live musician and a dance instructor teaches a creative movement class on the screen, and you can follow along whether you've had experience dancing or not. It meets the dancers where they are, so you can make some choices for yourself in terms of artistic choices and physical choices. And during the pilot, as I mentioned, it's a 6-week pilot. So each week one class was released, but people can watch it at their convenience and repeat classes if they'd like to. And that'll continue to be available over the next little while if people want to try it out. And you can enroll. There's no cost to it. And it is just a way for our dancers to stay connected and keep dancing at home and with their families, but also for new dancers to give it a try if it's something that they want to see and experience for themselves.
That's great. And just in terms of why someone would want to try this, I mean, I actually got to try it out myself. The approach when we were all gathered together in Ottawa, what seems like ages ago now, for the National Dementia Conference. And there was a little demonstration of how the program worked. And it was loads of fun, I got to say. It was really engaging. But aside from that, what would be the benefits for folks in engaging in this kind of program, whether it's in person or online?
Yeah, absolutely. The benefits of dance are across the board. So not only is it a physical activity, so you get that exercise and workout, there's that artistic component, and there's emotion. It can be inspired through the music. It can also be using imagery and themes and narratives so that the time just goes by in such a fun way. Oftentimes, our dancers will say, "Wow, is class over already?" Because you're exercising and you're dancing, but you're really having a freedom of expression and moving. And so I certainly, suggest that if anyone is even curious, to give it a try to see, where they can find their own sense of style and movement within each dance class.
So Angie, you mentioned that the program really aims to meet your dancers where they are. Can you tell us a little bit about how it actually adapts for individuals with cognitive impairment or dementia, and whether they would be a right, participant for your program?
We have had, over the course of the last few years, as we've been developing programs with Baycrest, we have had various levels of our programming, and some of the seated classes that have some repetition in them and have some options for movements, be it range of motion or speed and tempo, things like that. It just offers people options to do what feels best for them at that moment and what they're most comfortable with. So that's something that people have the freedom to make that choice within the dance class itself.
Yeah, and I can say from personal experience, sitting and dancing, it sounds odd, but it's equally engaging. It's equally fun. Richard, I don't know if you've tried out the dancing program or not. If not, I highly recommend it. But if you had any sort of advice for innovators, like Angie and the National Ballet School or others, what is it that your advice would be to them about what you and your family need to maintain your physical and cognitive health?
I think having those programs certainly is key. The range of options is incredible, and making it fun. All the physical activity I do is you have to enjoy doing it, and adding some variety and something new each time, so it makes you want to keep coming back. The other thing that I'm a big fan of benchmarking. So what is it that I want to do with this activity, and how do I get better at it? And so I always benchmark my own activity to see if I'm progressing and having a goal.
Even within choreography, from a dance perspective, our dancers feel a sense of accomplishment as they are practicing patterns and then building on that from week to week and feeling that sense of accomplishment. So, talking to people like Richard and other people in the community that inspire us for choreographic ideas as well is always really helpful. So thank you for that.
And just based on that, I mean, everything you're hearing is COVID, Angie, changing the way that you guys are piloting things or are going to be running things in the future? Is there a permanent shift in mind, taking into account these kinds of circumstances and the kind of advice that you're getting from folks like Richard?
I think it's impacted us all. So it certainly does have that feeling of life before COVID, and then this pandemic happened. Yeah. So really hearing about how that isolation people feel when they are having to be at home has been very powerful to hear. And so finding and exploring ways of maintaining connection, maintaining a sense of community, and keeping people moving, I think will continue to inspire us to really continue developing these kinds of programs. And this was a pilot during this time, but I do foresee us seeing how that can move forward and next steps for that. And it'll be really exciting to see where that can lead. Yeah.
Silver linings wherever we can find them, right?
So, Richard, you mentioned what you're looking for, but I guess based on, your father being in Victoria in the facility, is there anything that you think your father, perhaps a few years ago, or his community would want innovators to know on their behalf?
I think having the range of options, and I guess for my father, the range of things that were offered, whether it would be there was dance, there was music, all kinds of things. And some he would respond to very positively, some not so much. But a lot of these things he hadn't been exposed to before. So I guess it was a new environment, a new experience. And I was surprised to hear what things he did participate in that I never would have guessed that he would have done. So I found that quite fascinating. So, and over time, there were some things that he would gravitate to and some not so much. And then it started to decline as his dementia increased. But it was nice for me to know that he had exposure to all of these things.
Yeah, we find in this sort of research that we do in the Rotman Research Institute and aging research around the world, the brain is really a novelty-seeking device, right? So throughout our lifetimes, we're often looking for new things. So it's really a good sort of insight to note that just because someone hadn't tried something before when they were younger doesn't mean that they're not going to want to try something new later in life, and people's interests might change. So that's great that he was trying new things, and hopefully there'll be more things that will pique his interest in the future.
So a common segment of our podcast is where we always ask our panelists to provide some resources to our listeners. We often talk about what we call a selfish or selfless resource. So something that you feel our listeners would really benefit from. So maybe, Angie, we can turn to you first to start with what resources you'd like to offer our audience.
You can find out more about all of our Baycrest MBS Sharing Dance Seniors programming at our website, so mbs-enb.ca, as well as our Sharing Dance programs. We have a Bring Dance into Your Home page, which brings the joy of dance into your home. So if you have family members or varying ages of people that want to dance, there are some resources there. And also, in terms of something that's inspired us, we do have Parkinson's dance programs at Canada's National Ballet School as well. And one of the resources that really helped inspire and inform us was the Dance for PD, a program of the Mark Morris Dance Group. So that's a resource for sure that is near and dear to our heart.
We'll absolutely add those resources on our website so people will be able to find them as well. So thank you so much, Angie. Richard, your resources, what would you like our audience to check out?
One of the podcasts that I follow, it's called Exponential Wisdom, and it's put on by Peter Diamandis, who started the X Prize and Singularity University, basically the commercialization of innovation. So I find that interesting. I guess what have I followed up on is one of his ideas or innovations that got commercialized is an outfit called Health Nucleus, where they do a complete diagnostic of your body, genome mapping, MRI scans, blood tests for risk markers. So it goes back to both of my parents having dementia. So that plays on my mind is if I'm going to live a long time, I want to make sure that I have a quality of life. So having a complete diagnostic so I can benchmark and see if there's steps I can be taking now that will improve my prospects and quality of life going forward, I'm all for it.
So as we close this episode on physical health during the pandemic, we want to thank all of our guests for joining us for this special conversation in collaboration with Baycrest at Home. George Nakamura, Richard Sheppard, and Angie Seto, thanks so much for your stories and for inspiring us all. And I'd also like to make sure that we're doing a thanks to the whole podcast team, including Rosanne Aleong, who in addition to being co-host is also one of our executive producers, along with Simon Cheeseman. I also want to thank Ariel Townsend and Soren Chular and Linda Trong. Without all of them, we wouldn't be able to bring this to you, so thanks to everyone for that. To learn more about CABI, please visit us at cabi.com. And for more information about Baycrest at Home, you can visit baycrestathome.ca. And as we continue to navigate these incredibly unprecedented times, I hope everyone's staying as active as possible and make use of all of these resources. Listen to as many podcasts as you can. And most importantly, stay safe and well. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.